it goes back to the head and the heart.
Yeah.
But I've always just really liked those verses.
They are great.
Yeah.
The thing is that we all drag the old man in the world along with us into the church. And I mean, we fight tooth and nail against our own well-being, don't we? Look, there ain't no doubt I am my own worst enemy. That's the first one I got to overcome, and everything is me. And remember the picture, and you'll find it all through the scripture. When God brought Israel into the land, you remember what he told them about the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, and all? He said, I'm not going to conquer them all at once. He said, you trust me, I'm going to fight the battle. And did he fight their battles? Y'all realize when they took Jericho, the strongest city in the world, they didn't really lift a finger, did they? They just believed. But he said, we're going to do it a little at a time. You remember that? Why? He said he's going to use them as a training tool, didn't he? And that's what God does when we get saved. He leaves that sinful nature there. He doesn't just eradicate it, does he? The new will comes in alongside of it. For what? For training and teaching purposes. And that's what sanctification is. It's kind of like going to boot camp. You know, when a guy goes to boot camp, you show up a Marine at boot camp, the first thing they do is they're going to have to break you down. They've got to completely break you down to where you're just ready to submit. And when they get you all broke down, they start completely removing your way of thinking. And they start installing their way of thinking. But you know what everybody does? They fight against it. They complain. They moan. And so what is boot camp like? It's long and hard, isn't it? I went to Navy boot camp, which was a joke. I mean, really, you fold clothes and tie knots and do a little running and push-ups. It was just ridiculous. But what they try and do is they try and get you to completely get rid of your old method of thinking and instill a new method. But they don't do it overnight and say, okay, this is gone and that's in. They keep putting in new information and purging out the old, don't they? And that's what God does. That's sanctification. So I don't know, Nathan. I guess it's our own hard-headedness, you know.
So I had two questions. One has two parts to it, but it's what part does the pressure of Satan in the world system? We talked about the flesh. Mm-hmm. Satan in the world system. Everybody, if I try to teach a lesson similar, yeah, but Satan does this, or the world system, for example. I have to have a job. I have to go to work. Mm-hmm. I got kids. That the world is constantly pulling at you.
It is.
So how is it, how do we deal with that? That was the first question. Second, I want to get it out so I don't forget. The second question was, what does it look like when we're not walking in the power of the resurrection, but we're church going, choir singing, and trying really hard, because you just hit on it. Mm-hmm. But we're now in the flesh, but we're quote unquote church going.
Yeah.
Right. And what does that end up looking like? What's the result of that? Mm-hmm. Are we in that stage in the church today? Sort of a Laodicean thing. It doesn't seem like it. Seems like we're churches. We got a lot of new church starts, big church growth, and a lot of celebrity preaching going on. Not that they may be preaching the right stuff, but. So those are my two. Let me say them again. One, the world system and the pressure on Christians to do everything we're talking about. And then secondly, what does it look like when a person is in the flesh, but they've slipped into away from the power of the resurrection?
Okay. I tell you what, let's start backwards. Let's do the last part first. Yeah. Whenever you think about people that are going through the motions, religiously speaking, even though they might be frantically motivated, even though they might be in a fever pitch about what they're doing, what it looks like Mount Sinai. Y'all realize what was the greatest religious gathering in the Old Testament? Was at Mount Sinai. What did they do? They made a calf. They worshiped it, and what did they do around it? They gave themselves over to the flesh. In other words, if you would have looked at that, as they're getting started, you look and say, what are these people going to do? But if you follow it out a little bit and look at the fruit of it, what was the fruit? Drunkenness, nakedness, debauchery, wasn't it? So when you look, you would say, Galatians 5, this has got nothing to do with the Lord. This all looks like it's in the name of some God. And they even called that calf the Lord, didn't they? They used his name. But what it looked like was the fruit was all fruit of the flesh, wasn't it? And to me, when I look at a lot of what's going on in churches, that's all I see. I see a lot of fervor and high-pitched stuff going on, but in the end, what's it producing? It's producing just a bunch of fleshly foolishness, isn't it? I mean, look, I don't want to offend anybody that might be watching, but that guy Dave that y'all had over there, I mean, what fruit did he produce? The fruit that he produced that I saw visually really manifest itself when he come in there dressed like a Marine to celebrate and worship the military. There's the fruit. Is that the will of God? No. So look at it. You'll see. I mean, y'all look at some of these big, massive churches. What's the fruit they're producing? Is it changed lives, converted to the glory of God? It's all kind of movements and it's all kind of social organizations. And hey, lots of them do a lot of real good social things, but that's not the gospel. The things that are good for the society are the byproduct of Christian and the gospel. You don't put it first. So I think the way that we overcome this, because you're right, we're all just bombarded with the world, aren't we? But how does God address our person? Through the mind. You know how the world does it? The same way. Y'all know Romans 12, right? Be you not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I mean, how do we, all right, how does our society dress? Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous looking, but you know why? We went to class one night in Pensacola, and a sweet young girl there, Alex, had on a pair of pants. She said, "You like my new pants?" They were shredded. I mean, they were just shredded all down the fronts. And I said, "You bought those?" And Karen said, $100. And I said, "What? Why would she pay that for those?" She saw somebody wearing them. Well, how did she see somebody wearing them? She was watching some show. She heard some music thing. She saw some awards. That's how all of that comes to us, isn't it? Satan addresses us through our mind, and that's what he does. And so what do you and I got to do? Be careful what we take in. You know, you are what you eat, they say. And that's what happens. So, yeah, we battle the world, and someone say, "Well, that all sounds good, but all this other stuff." We'll push all that other stuff out. You know, y'all know anybody that sits around and watches Fox News all day long? I know several people. What's their life like? Misery. It's all they talk about. It's stress. Look, I can say this. Do you realize the danger of what's going on in our country right now? The religious society, they've just labeled them evangelicals, have attached themselves to a political party. They really have, okay? So beyond doubt, they have just attached themselves to that. I don't care who you're voting for. I don't care. But the problem is, if you have attached yourself to this movement, now you are being labeled as an enemy. Do you realize the persecution they're going to bring on themselves? You know why that persecution is going to come on them? The same reason it came on pseudo-Israel. What did the true Israelite trust in the Old Testament? God. What did pseudo-Israel trust? The temple, the government, Egypt, we're going to lean on it. All they're doing is they're setting themselves aside to be earmarked for persecution. And that's how persecution always starts, on the unbelieving religious house, isn't it? Folks, that's what those people are doing. You want to be persecuted? Go get you one of them MAGA hats and put it in your front yard and a flag. Look, I'll tell y'all point blank, I will vote for Trump before I vote for Biden, because I believe his policies are more in line with Biden. He's not a Christian. I don't believe that for a second. I believe he's an egomaniac. But personally, when given those two choices, I say, which one of these is more in line with biblical, so I'll have to vote that way. But do I think he's going to save us from anything? Folks, I personally believe his main goal in life is to get all the glory for himself that he can. I mean, listen to him speak. Now, I certainly agree with him more than the other moron, but both of them are morons. I mean, really, they are. The Christians have aligned themselves with the political movement, and they're going to pay a serious price. You know what they're basically saying right now? Peace, peace. We're going to take back the Senate. We're going to take back the House and the presidency, and we're going to change all these laws, and we're going to get things straightened out. Do you know what the false prophets were telling the Israelites? While the Assyrian army and the Babylonians were coming over the hill to kill every one of them, peace and safety. They said, we've got the temple. Nothing can happen to us while we've got the temple. What's the right saying today? We're the people of God. We're the conservatives. We're right. And again, I'm not picking on anybody's political party. I'm just telling you, there ain't no hope in that stuff. You be careful lining up in that sort of thing. All you're doing is earmarking yourself for persecution. It's coming. Can't y'all see it? I mean, you cannot voice a conservative opinion anywhere, can you? That's going to get worse. I don't care who's in office. That's just how it's heading. It's heading that way because we as a nation have turned from God and God's given us over. And so we now have taken on the policies, not of the Christian church, we've taken on the policies of the world. And look at the policies. Y'all know in our country early on, in the 1600s, even in the early 1700s, the church, I don't mean the whole country was believers, but the country was being steered by biblical policies because the people were Christians, weren't they? And so their policies were steering things. It ain't that way anymore. Today we're being steered by the God of this world. And y'all know where he's steering us. We're slowly jumping into the pig so we can all go over the cliff, aren't we? Yeah, so just don't take in what the world's selling. Man, don't listen to it. The worst thing in the world you could do would be sit there in front of Fox or CNN all day and listen to that stuff. You talk about blow your mind and just ruin you. I mean, I run into people all the time and they're just frantic about what's going on. They say, don't you care? I say, of course I care, but what good's it going to do me to go through a political movement? That's not going to change anything. The only thing that'll change anything is the preaching of the gospel. Okay? Anything else? I hope Joan doesn't have a Make America Great hat. Joan, I'm sorry. I didn't know.
No.
All right. Nothing else?
Do you think there's harsher judgment for people that do claim things in the name of God?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. The people that were held to the highest, strictest judgment in the Old Testament were the false teachers and the false prophets and the false people of God. Peter said, judgment begins at the house of God. And Jesus said to the people who claim to be the house of God, it's going to be better for the men of Sodom and Gomorrah than for you. Well, you know what I could say to the church in America today? It's going to be better for the men of Jerusalem than for you. We've got the whole word of God, don't we? Yeah, it's going to definitely be, it's horrible. When you read Revelation and you see the judgment that comes on the world, that judgment all starts on the false church of God. It's that whore where the judgment starts. I mean, look, can't y'all see how judgment's already coming on the professing Christian? And what do most professing Christians identify as? Conservative, right wing. They're identifying themselves with a political group. It's nuts. I mean, it really is crazy. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? No?
I do have a question. But I can wait.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna say, and maybe this is more of a smaller sample size with this type of question, but do you ever find yourself in your mind, at least, whenever something bad happens and you feel targeted by it, but then you have to stop and think, am I being persecuted because I'm a Christian? Am I being persecuted because I'm a gospel spreader? Because you don't have to be a teacher, preacher, you just spread it. You know, do you ever find yourself or see this, in other people where you go, it's hard to say if that's persecution for being a Christian or if someone didn't just like you or you did a bad job at something or you were being a jerk.
Yeah.
Have you ever in your mind struggled with, well, I just don't really know. It's kind of up for the Lord to, do you know the question or what?
I understand what you mean. Yeah. I'll tell you my thoughts on that, and I don't know if it'll help you or not, but I have a personality whereas I always find the wrong that I did in things. And so no matter what somebody says or anytime I might be persecuted or whatever, in my own mind, when I think about it, I feel like I brought this on myself. Yeah. But even if it is persecution just for preaching the gospel, I would take the advice Jesus gave the disciples. He said, basically, don't keep score. He said, when you have done everything I told you to do, at best, consider yourselves unprofitable servants. Because we do want to tend to think, oh, I've been persecuted for the Lord. The best thing to do is just leave all that for Judgment Day. Because if we start trying to keep up with, hey, did this just happen? Now, when you are really being persecuted, knowing that you're being persecuted for the Lord is a source of strength, right? But I wouldn't try and take different little situations and say, now, why is this happening? And try and earmark. What it'll do, it get you in the idea of trying to mark your rewards,
Yeah. because that's kind of part of the question of, I think in my mind, is it sinful to even try to process it like that? Or should we try to see this, like, the spiritual side of things?
I think trying to see the spiritual side of things is always good, and
Yeah.
analyzing is always good, not over-analyzing, but it seems to me that in our unsanctified state, our flesh is still so powerful that the flesh enters in there and wants to tally up.
Yeah.
No matter what I do, I always have to beware. I'll think it sometimes, people say to you, how many classes you teach, right? People ask you that all the time. I say, I don't know. Well, we'll figure it up. I don't even want to think about it because I know my nature. My nature will be, well, let's see, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got it. You know what I mean? I mean, that's our nature. So Jesus told the disciples, consider yourselves unprofitable servants. But on judgment day, what did he say? Well done, good and profitable servant. So let him keep the score. Yeah. Anything else? No.
Y'all tell Brittany goodbye. You think she's on there, and Jeremy and the whole crew. Maybe
All right,
Daniel
who's
and
the
Vicky
source of
may be
this?
on there.
If I had to guess, Nathan and Taylor.
Them cash toters.
Thank y'all.
It wasn't us. We don't like you that much. Appreciate you guys.
Say that's tax free. I wouldn't do that.
Tax free. I'm not doing that. Lord willing, the creek don't rise. See y'all tomorrow. If it rises for this whole center, boy.
Yeah. You
We'll
know what
see
they
you
call
at
that?
Jesus' feet.
Hang on.
Bye, guys.
That's what it's called.